Today I'm going to talk about diversitycapebreton.ca. It's a web portal project funded through SSHRC's public outreach program. And that program now exists in a revised form as the partnership program. This project arose in the context of community-engaged research with Central and Eastern European cultural groups in Cape Breton. It's a project that was collaboratively articulated with these groups and with heritage institutions and organizations, including the Beaton Institute, from whom you heard earlier today, here at CBU, and cultural community organizations, including cultural centers and parishes. And that's why we've asked Father Roman from the Ukrainian parish to join us today for our preliminary launch, as well as a number of other CBU researchers who are involved. The project involves research centers and researchers at the University of Alberta, especially ethnomusicologist Michael Frischkopf, and who also brought on board Michael Cohen from the University of Aizu in Japan. The diversitycapebreton.ca site itself is an Islandora platform, and as it proceeds through the workshop this afternoon, please ask any more questions you might like to about that. The technical components are probably better addressed by some other people, but I'm certainly here to answer your questions if I can. The Islandora platform contains a repository, which is essentially a searchable archive, and a website, which is what you see here, which researchers and the public can access and engage with. Museums and heritage organizations around the world are discussing how to integrate intangible cultural heritage into historical interpretation. Many of us are aware of the UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage of 2009, which places great emphasis on performance and the production of identity and tradition. This project examines and shares intangible heritage in Cape Breton society and culture as it relates to the island's Eastern and Central European groups, and that is especially the Polish, Ukrainian, Croatian, Hungarian, and Jewish groups. Drawn to Cape Breton's mines and mills during the 19th and early 20th centuries, Cape Bretons, Ukrainians, and other Eastern Europeans have been overshadowed by the island's Scottish heritage. Official discourses in tourism and education and cultural policy all emphasize Cape Breton's Anglo-Celtic and perhaps even Acadian traditions, for which the island is renowned. Despite a multi-ethnic population, Nova Scotia has in many ways been Tartanized, made Scottish. Local business, especially special interest groups and governing bodies, have all capitalized on Cape Breton's Gaelic roots. People from away, as outsiders are often described in Cape Breton, also tend to neglect the diversity on the island, as well as the connections that the island's groups have with one another and with populations in other parts of Canada and transnationally. The web portal, diversitycapebreton.ca, addresses the gap in the province's historical and heritage interpretation, as identified in Nova Scotia Museum's interpretive plan in 2009, by mobilizing existing and continually emerging research that explores Cape Breton's Eastern and Central European antecedents beyond its more familiar Scottish and Acadian characteristics, thus more fully and accurately redefining the island's diverse ethnocultural profile. Together with Cape Breton community members, the portal content has been developed in collaboration with experts in ethnography, education, web design, and cyber worlds. The portal has been designed to reach diverse audiences. It leads to several distinct sections integrating interactive multimedia resources and learning opportunities for technology-enriched learning about the significant contribution of Eastern and Central European immigrants and their descendants to the rich social and cultural landscape of Cape Breton Island. The web portal project builds on continuing collaborations with Cape Breton communities, which began in 2008. The research has involved the production of museum and gallery exhibits and multimedia educational resources. Research findings have been integrated already into site interpretation for tourists, and they've become the basis of a number of academic papers and publications, including a local history book. The web portal project has involved about a dozen student research assistants, undergraduates, and graduate students from across Canada, in the UK, Eastern Europe, and Japan, as well as local community-based researchers. I'm just going to ask them to, I'd like to acknowledge each of the students who are here today. So Daria Stodashchuk and Aaron Eldridge came from Toronto, well, via Toronto from Alberta. As I look around the room, I think Rasika's in the back. He's working with Michael Cohen in Japan. And Yana at the table in the back is from CUNY. She's a student of Jane Sugarman, originally of Serbian, Croatian origins, but grew up in Toronto, and so it has brought new perspectives. We also have Jelka Vubratovic, who is going to join us by video presentation later in the week when we have a roundtable. I'm wondering, Patricia at the back table, some of you may remember her from the CSTM meeting in Edmonton. She was working with the project then, and since that time she's moved to Japan herself to teach English, but she continues as a community-based researcher. And Eli next to her is a PhD student in Cambridge who worked with Jewish communities here. Amber Riddington is known to many of you as an ethnomusicologist and folklorist, and she served as a consultant on the project. She has expertise and a whole professional experience already working with such resources. Eric Favreau, who sits in the center of the room, is an educational resource developer and consultant who has a lifetime of experience with the educational board in Nova Scotia. I hope I haven't missed anyone who's here. Production of the web portal has provided many opportunities for skills development of staff and volunteers, for students and non-student research assistants. They've been taught ethnographic techniques, including archival research and collection procedures, ethnographic interview skills, multimedia and other materials processing, project management, digitization, content creation, programming, and a variety of other media-specific tasks. And I say that for those of us who are concerned about grants that might enable such projects, one of the components that SSHRC always looks for in particular is the training of what they call highly qualified personnel. And being specific about the kinds of training that students can gain, what students can gain, in fact, from participating in these projects is an important component of these grants. The students also liaise with community members as part of the research team, and many of them have made this research part of their own graduate research program, so part of major research projects, dissertations, and theses. In a minute, I'm going to take you through a beta version, a preliminary version of the portal, which will be revised based on feedback gathered through this week and through community consultation. And the web portal will be publicly launched in August during a major community event in the Whitney Pier at the Ukrainian Church Hall. The web portal integrates interactive multimedia resources and learning opportunities. Online resources, some of which are still in development, include a repository of oral histories, ethnographic interviews, youth experiences, cultural performances, community events, and material culture. And that's, if you press here, if you'd like, and if you have a computer or something available to you now, you can actually go to this site. We've opened it specifically so that you'll be able to engage with it this week. Virtual exhibits feature material culture items such as costumes, religious and other artifacts, including locally made early 1900s cymbalic or Ukrainian dulcimers, and digital images, which are archival quality reproductions of photographs, documents, news and print resources, music scores, text in English and other languages, some of which are already in digital form in local archives and research materials collected through this ongoing project, as well as audio-video clips and interpretive text. Educational resources for educators K-12 as well as post-secondary levels, developed with Eric, who is a community and a cultural expert here, and who has served as a teacher and who continues to work with teachers and the board. Another online resource is a link to an ethnocultural finding aid at the Beaton Institute concerning the Eastern and Central European collections, as well as a resource. Oh, also there is a brand new project page that the Beaton has created. I'll take you through it in a minute. Well, maybe I'll go there now. Sorry. There's also a resource site for language and cultural learning that will direct any users to already established programs about Eastern and Central European roots. And interactive components include a multimedia map, which Eli will talk about in more detail right after I speak, and collaborative, immersive, musical cyber world and virtual environment that Michael and Rasko will take you through at the end of the afternoon. Finally, there's a blog that details the project's ongoing development, and the intent is also that this will serve as a discussion forum with community members so that they will be able to send us materials and or provide further information about materials that they find in the archive. It's something that was requested by many of the community members who are local and many who have moved away to different sites, either in North America or in Eastern Europe. So the portal is framed within a textual interpretation of its introductory material in French as well as in English. Oops, sorry, this is much differently than mine. So but the French translation is only of introductory material, and if you'd like, I can discuss the issue of translation in other languages in a little more detail. But in a nutshell, our choice was to represent the material in as much as possible in the languages that it exists in. So if it's in Croatian or Ukrainian or Polish, as well as in English, which is the common language of the site. The collaborative processes that we engage in this project value a very wide variety of people, their lives, their experiences, knowledge, memories, and practices from the very beginning of this research project through the various stages of sharing what we learned through the project and in the continuing relationships that we have with different community groups. So this project has led to a number of other projects and relationships with scholars and institutions that started with this project but are now involved in new projects. The aims and the processes and deliverables of this project have been defined collaboratively by scholars together with community leaders and members and directors and staff of museums and archives and artists, as well as supervisors and heads of university offices. It's been a very important part of my learning as a researcher to encounter the various limitations, whether they be deadlines that Catherine was talking about, a hard deadline of launching on March 31st, or the funding limitations that ultimately shape what we can encounter in a site or in a resource such as this or in a museum. The collaborative, designed to meet both community-defined needs and institutional academic goals, and to facilitate understandings of history, of communities and cultural practices from the inside out. That is, from the vantage points of those who live and make them meaningful. That's the point of this site, to create this together so that it would be meaningful for the people who are being represented here and who would like to use this site. The collaborative process also provides an opportunity to rethink the research process so that communities are partners in research as well as focus of study. A shared authority is inherent in definitions of research and in the resulting representations of history and experience. The process and deliverables of this project are also dialogic. They integrate a variety of materials, perspectives, and voices to facilitate respectful and productive dialogue. They present the material in ways that are evocative of related histories and experiences and engage multiple audiences with the research and communities involved, facilitating conversations among who we conceive of as the doers and the knowers, changing the way that knowledge is created and represented, while also stimulating participation by students and scholars as social and cultural activists. This project has inspired some innovative perspectives that have expanded the creative boundaries and possibilities for our research processes. This work values research participants and communities in both teaching and learning, and in constructing and sharing information. We hope this web portal will serve as a valuable public resource about ethnocultural groups that have been active in Cape Breton since the late 1800s, but have gone largely unacknowledged. Shedding new light on what it means to do research in Atlantic Canada, we hope this project will also promote deeper understandings of cultural identities that resonate beyond its national context. For the rest of this afternoon and periodically through the week especially. We hope that you'll take some time to engage with the site and to send us an email through the contact page, which I'll come to in a minute. To send us an email to let us know about things that you find especially useful or problematic. As I mentioned earlier, it's intended that this is a first launch, it's a preliminary launch, there's some samples of material, but our intent is that we will revise it before the public launch. And your feedback is very valuable to us. I think I'll take you through the site a bit, and then I'll pass the podium to Eli. So, here's the home page. And on the About page, we can learn about how this site, how the project came together, and details such as how the logo was created through community consultation. Community research partners are identified here. This is not a complete list, and we're not sure that this is the best way to represent this list. Amber Riddington's been involved in projects where they have photos of individuals, and that's something that we like. It's also something sensitive to make sure that everyone's acknowledged in the right way, so this is something we're thinking yet about. In our research and development team here, everyone's described in terms of their role and other projects that they're working on. Islandora, the platform through which this portal is delivered is restrictive in a sense. We had to categorize information in some ways to make collections practically accessible through the site. And although it's an interest of mine in particular that we would be looking through this project, we would be looking at the connections between and across ethnically defined communities. Ultimately, this was the best practical way that we could find to group the information that we have, the material that we have. So this is something about the limitations of technology. But the site is it's a living archive and repository. So there may be ways that we can change this in the future. Each of the folders contains varieties, types of materials. So there are they're further categorized within each cultural group, and then in each folder you can find. Oops, this is not an example. But there are audio, video materials as well as photographs. Now the site is also searchable, so you can type in a search word, and a variety of information items will come up. Now this one, then you'll see the different types of resources, and then you can follow each piece. It takes a minute to load sometimes. And then some information about what each item is. I'll also note that some of this information was loaded overnight to make sure that we could have it here for you. So Daria talked to me just before lunch and she's like, just so you're not surprised. I don't want to spend too much time tediously going through this when you can't control it yourself, but just to give you an example of what's going to be possible in terms of format. Oops. Sometimes this one moves and sometimes it doesn't. So right now it's not doing that. But okay, I'll let that one load on your own computer. And then the Beaton Institute, and then we have a project page that leads further to that. You can browse by culture or their project page. So they group the types of materials that they have for easy access. So just a bit of backstory on this. When I started working here in 2008, the community asked me to create an exhibit, which we opened, the first exhibit that we opened in 2009 in the art gallery here. And as part of the work that I was doing here, in those early years. I collected many materials from private archives in people's homes where they wanted to put them somewhere for safekeeping. And I was working with the Beaton quite closely at the time. And so we brought in these materials and gave them to the Beaton to develop, to really augment their ethnocultural holdings. And one thing I learned, when you deposit things into an archive, the archive then owns it. So, which is great, I mean, they're looking after it and it's there for safekeeping. But what it means in terms of developing resources like this is that anything that is the archival holding, we can't put into our repository because it belongs to the archive. So the way that we solved that together with the Beaton was they created this parallel site. So you can access it through the portal so that they're providing context for one another. And then, also last thing, I understand, ta-da, great. Educational resources. Now Eric has developed these resources in line with current curriculum guidelines for the school system. Yadia has also begun a page of links. They may be reorganized somewhat differently, but the idea is that people can go to learn more about these different groups locally and then transnationally as well. And here's some of the recent blogs about us today. That's all I have to say. I'm wondering if you have any questions about this, or if now's a good time to turn this over to.
Quick question about accessing it. We can only access it from on the university
No.
parameters, or
No.
we can access it from
Wherever.
wherever.
We're just not going to tell too many people because we don't want people to go here and have the expectation that this is what the site is.
Okay.
That's why we're really keeping this quiet for now. We'd like it to be accessible enough so that we can garner some feedback, but really be very careful about how we prepare it for the public launch in August.
I have a question about the categories. Is there any overlap, for instance, between the geographic partitions, Ukrainian, Polish, and
Yep, Croatian, etc.
Croatian?
Yeah.
And the Jewish thing, are there like
Yeah.
Jewish Ukrainians or something?
So this was why I really didn't want to do it this way, but we just couldn't find another way. Many of the families, for instance, are of joint ancestry. You might be all Ukrainian, Croatian, Polish, whatever.
Yeah.
But so how do you represent that? Like how do you? So what we've done is whatever seems to be the way that the person identified in the strongest way, and then we'll make note of additional affiliations in the detailed description, so that if you search it, it might come up, but it might not be in that folder. It's especially important when you think about the fact that the Polish church was also the home church for Croatians because they're both Roman Catholic. But another connection is many of the Jewish families who were here spoke multiple languages, and so the flow of information, the interactions is what I really was hoping we could find some way to represent. So we're going to have to try to find a way to exhibit material to do that, I think. Yeah.
That reminds me of another question about language. So the site is bilingual, it's English and French?
It's not. It's not, because that would involve a whole other huge layer of not simply translation, but of a much more complex functionality. And so for now, this is how we're going to present it. That the information is at least, the introductory information is in French, and everything is going to be in English, and then if an item is Croatian in its origin, then there will be information in Croatian or in transliterated Ukrainian as well as Cyrillic Ukrainian. So the languages are a complex part of this, much more complex than when we first envisioned this and applied for a grant and thought it would be really easy. Oh, you just switch between languages. Well, in fact, in programming, it's not that easy. And when I started to talk with the creator of the Islandora site about this. I went to some workshops, and he was saying, you know, this is why these kinds of projects, he says, always have the quote-unquote techie and the quote-unquote visionary, right? So I'm not the techie. I know a lot more about web and digital technologies now. It's amazing, you know, what we've been learning together. But I have an idea about how I'd like people to use it, how I like the information to be represented. And then it meets with the challenge of, well, what's actually possible? Possible in terms of programming possibility, possible in terms of limited by money, possible in terms of limited by deadlines, and so forth. So that's why kind of we're stressing that this is a living site, and this is what we are going to do now, and we'll continue to get feedback and make improvements as much as possible to accommodate people's concerns, especially in terms of how they are represented.
Presumably the HTML is coded with Unicode, which allows switching between fonts. So you could have, you know, Hebrew font for Yiddish and accents for Serbo-Croatian or something.
Yeah, that's what he said about the languages, that we could have different fonts in here for that reason, yeah.
Thank you.
Why did you choose to have input given in an email form rather than, say, have a Facebook site or some other social media for, was there some thoughtfulness behind that?
Yep, yeah. We originally, the idea was that we would have a community conversations, a forum space where there could be a lot more dialogue, free-flowing. And Daria may be able to speak to that more. We've had quite a lengthy discussion with the creator of Islandora. It's not such an easy thing for them to do, as it turns out. Also, the interoperability, like actually hooking the Facebook or other things up to this site is not terribly, it's not maybe so easy as we might think it would be. Like if you have a WordPress site, many of us probably have WordPress sites, it's really easy to hook Facebook or Twitter up to this, but this is maybe not so easy to work, right? So we're still working on that. And maybe, so if you have found that that's particularly useful in projects that you've been running, then maybe that's something we decide that we just put resources into at some point.
No, I just asked, I mean, it's like that we did with the Ed Leach collection 11 years ago, we put email there, but we've often said since the interactivity might have a different nature if we connect to Facebook. But
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that,
People understand.
again, it's a limitation that we came up against, but that doesn't mean it's not possible to find a way through that. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm.
In terms of image, why did you decide to put the sea and the flowers?
So we had a number of meetings with large community groups. We also had interviews with people who spent a great deal of time with us in the creation of, well, first in the gathering of the information and the creation of the portal. And we asked people themselves about what's important in terms of representing who they are. And the logo has gone through several revisions, and so all of what's in here is a value that we have heard about from the community. The sea is something that's common to all of them, coming to Cape Breton as an island, as part of the immigrant experience. And interestingly, I've always said when people ask in conferences, you know, people who identify, say, as Ukrainian on the island, always identify first, usually first, as I'm a Caper first, I'm a Cape Bretoner first, or before I'm a Ukrainian or a Polish. And on the radio this morning, I heard a former politician conducted a survey, said the very same thing, that people first identify with their region, in this case Cape Breton, most strongly whenever they travel far away or even are still in Nova Scotia. So anyway, and then in the silhouette in the background is a silhouette of the steel plant and the mines, for which most of the immigrants in the late 1800s came to Cape Breton. The poppy is something that the people in the Polish community felt was really representative of their culture. They kept repeating the word poppy and to include in the logo, And other items, you can read more about the details on the public side. Yeah, there's a really lengthy discussion on that. So now maybe I'll ask, oh, yeah, sorry, Kaylee.
Hi, Marcia. Yeah, I just have a quick question about how the project has in the past or has it or their plan for the future. How has the project thought about I guess mediating or dealing with friction
Yeah.
of all kinds?
Would you like to be more specific?
Well, like it could be like intercommunal friction about sort of different versions of different events.
Yeah.
Or things like just the choice of images.
Choice of images, you mean like in the logo, for instance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to build consensus. Because
Time?
friction is necessary, but
It's been taken time to make sure that we check and we recheck, and people are generally, when there seems to be a consensus found, then it's the time to go forward. So it has taken longer than the original plan, but I think there has been understanding on the part of whoever governs this. I mean, sure gave us the extensions, right? So, but in terms of friction, well, I think one of the reasons we wanted to use different kinds of materials is different kinds of materials say different things, sometimes about the same thing, right? As well as multiple interviews that might address the same event or occurrence. And that was the idea then, that there would be many perspectives, as really it occurs for us in the communities in which we live. Everybody's got a different story about whatever that happened on the night of that wedding, right? So, and that is, as this project developed, that's the sense that we've been wanting to convey. The very first person that I met with as a community expert when I came here in 2008 is a very strong personality. He'd written a community history, and people greatly value the tremendous amount of work that he put into that. And many people are also unhappy in different ways about how he wrote the story, right? So that was an important indication for me that it's going to be really important working here to acknowledge that there are many different stories. And so hopefully using many different kinds of materials and people's voices that we're working toward that. And also that's why there's an email so they can write us if they're angry. Or if they decide they change their mind about something they shared with us and they want us to take it down or whatever it is. Yeah. Father Roman, what do you think? I'm not putting you on the spot. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of, and it's not tension, it's just a lot of people feel that different parts of the story are important to them. And if you tell the story, it's important for them to have their side heard. And that's the challenge, and that's one of the benefits of sharing. And only by bringing together all these components can the entire story be told, not just from one perspective. But I'm just curious, on your search engine, will it be language, if somebody types Hebrew and there's original text in Hebrew, will the search engine be able to pick it up? Or Cyrillic, if somebody types Cyrillic and there's original material on that web portal, will the search engine be able to pick it up?
Good question. Because we do have different scripts in the description. So, that's a question.
That's my question.
I mean, I can't try it here because I don't think we have all that on this laptop, but, yeah. So, sorry, Dottie?
Right now, it's only for English. In other words, for English. Once we start integrating more language, I think that's definitely something that we'll look at, and I think it's important because there are other scripts, but at the moment, it is only.
The search is only in English now. Okay. But that's a note we'll take back to the crew. Thanks.